fall, fall, fall. Winter. That's how it rolls up here.
Well, fall, snowfall, like an extra day of fall, then snowfall again. It's
by the end of the week, we could
here.
have up to a foot of snow in Fargo.
Boy.
Meanwhile, it was 78 today here.
Lovely.
Boy, don't you miss Fargo.
I sure do. I miss being in a foot of snow by the end of October.
Yeah. Because, like, it was super nice up until about, like, the middle of last week, and then the temperature just nosedived. Or nosedove, or however you say that.
Did a nosedive.
Nosedived.
Nosedive. And,
what is the past tense of nose?
Nays. I blew my nays.
Nosed, of course.
Nobody knows.
Nobody nays.
I will have nain by then.
I interrupted.
So what's new in your collective worlds?
After the last podcast, which was, as we were recording it, only 3 days ago, had the wedding. So now Nathan and I get to see his brother's wife, and he is my sister's husband.
Yep.
So that's what's new
we're
there.
like in-laws in-law.
Yeah, as we said last week, we are transitive property brothers.
So yeah,
because we're related to the same guy. But
and also the same gal.
Yeah, it's a pretty.
So that's cool.
We can continue making these jokes until the end of time.
Oh yes.
Oh yes, till death do they part.
Yeah. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. We're fresh out of listener requests now. We did Aquaman. We did Hey Look It's Aquaman. We got
finally did the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
when did she first request we do that? It was a while ago. Like
it was months. It's been several months.
Yeah, like I want to say like maybe early summer, late spring, somewhere in there, when the podcast was yet young. But
indeed.
I mean, compared to a lot of podcasts, this is still very much in its infancy.
We're learning to walk and maybe saying "dada."
Learning to walk again.
We're learning to build the plane as we're flying it.
Yeah. We are beginning to experience lift a little bit from the ground, so I think it's a start.
We had like an actual slope of followers.
Oh, really?
Within recent times.
Was it a bell curve or like a sustained increase?
There was like it went like that instead of
flat
up
line.
and then up and then flat line up and then flat.
So people kept listening.
It went like followers. So that's the number of people who hit the button.
Gotcha. That's neat. Thank you for being here.
Yes, all two of you.
Yes.
The two has grown into a larger two.
Mm-hmm. There is more. The two is, increased in magnitude.
If that doesn't make sense to you on the face of it, there is a way to construe it such that actually makes sense. Because really, one could conceive of the number 2 as simply the conjoining of 1 and 1.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you encapsulate the concept of
and once you've
a 1 and a 1 as a 2.
And a 1 and a 1 and a bigger 2.
So all you have to do is find 2 appropriate subgroups of our audience, no matter how large it is, and you can still construe it as 2.
Like guys and girls, for example.
You know,
for instance, yes.
We could have done this joke a little differently, where we said we only had 10 listeners, and then it would be true depending on what base we use.
That's true.
But we're too far into it.
Yeah.
We're 10 far into it.
In binary, that is.
Yeah, what else is new?
We've gotten a little further in My Hero Academia.
Oh yeah.
We've completed the Eri arc. So
The Eri Rescue.
the
arc.
Eri Rescue
Eri
arc.
Rescue,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's more involving her, I imagine, in the rest of the season.
So we're bumping up against episode 80, aren't we?
Yep.
So
How many episodes are there total out right now?
There are 88 out at present.
Oh, okay. So we're getting
Okay.
there.
So
And this last arc is something of a filler arc, so
that's
Oh,
what
okay.
I'm picking up.
Yeah, sort of in between.
the tail end of the season sort of foreshadows what's happening next, and it's pretty hype. So
Cool.
We were talking to our friend Charles the other day because he showed his face, and he was saying he's been reading the manga and it's gotten pretty wild. So I'm not sure what that bodes for the show.
Probably good things.
When is the next season supposed to come out for that?
2021 late.
Oh, dang. Okay, so we got a while then.
And
Yeah.
Do we wait for that to review it?
we can review what's out now and then
Probably
wait for
not.
it to review the next season.
But then, how long is this? How many seasons is this show gonna go before it wraps up?
A lot.
As
A
many
lot.
as the
Because
manga's
y-
still ongoing, I
Well,
believe. So.
You also know what the end point is.
Right. Yeah.
You know how the story ends already.
Mhm.
They tell you at the beginning how the story ends. So you sort of gauge how much is left by how far away you are from reaching that point.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And he is
And right now we're nowhere near that point.
no, because the main character is still a first year student at this school. So
He's
there's-
like just finishing his first year.
Mhm.
yeah. So that's there's a lot of content they can draw, and honestly, I don't really feel like it's going to feel like it drags the way they've written the show.
I mean, it does drag. It
But
takes
that's
them
just-
5 episodes to get anything done.
Yeah.
But they're fun to watch regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't mind watching 5 episodes just to watch them put milk back in the fridge,
It's not quite that bad.
it's not quite that bad.
It's
But
not
the
as bad
fight
as
will start.
Naruto for any of you who might be familiar with that, where it literally takes them 25 episodes to put milk in the fridge.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
It's a little further to it's not quite on that side of the spectrum, but it's sort of tipped slightly that way past the middle is how they written this one.
Hopefully we'll finish the season before Mandalorian season 2 drops.
Hmm.
I'm excited for that. And I
That's
think
like
that's the
is
end
that
of the
really
month.
November?
That's
Or
I think
no,
it's
like
October
Halloween.
31st.
Yeah. So like
So
Halloween.
yeah. And I
Well,
think WandaVision drops at the same time.
Yep. That also.
So
does.
both of those I am very interested in watching.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to.
Unlike a lot of people who are fans of The Mandalorian, I don't actually have that wildly high of expectations.
I don't particularly either. I just want to have fun in an actually good Star Wars
Yeah, no,
property.
I'm just assuming I'll enjoy it, and I'm not expecting it to shatter my world or anything like that. It's like, this is fun. I like this.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
No, I'm. The first season of Mandalorian didn't do anything crazy for me either.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. It was exactly what I wanted from the show,
yeah,
and I think more of that is just kind of what I want from it.
Mhm.
Which is just good, fun Star Wars adventures with a Boba Fett style character.
Mm-hmm. And he says the trailer said he's looking for other Mandalorians, so you never know Boba could make an appearance.
Did you not see the Boba cameo in season 1? It
No.
wasn't so much a cameo, but you saw his bottom half as he walked up to the dead lady in Tatooine. Boba Fett's in season 2.
Was I not paying attention?
Probably.
I must not have been paying attention.
You
Or
only
I
really
forget.
recognize his boots and cape if you're me.
Oh, well, maybe I just forgot about it. Maybe I probably would have recognized it at the time, but maybe I'll have to go back and look at it.
So no, that'll be fun. And
Mm-hmm.
and all the trailers for WandaVision have me super intrigued.
Yeah,
Uh,
it looks
I'm-
kind of wacky and psychedelic, and I'm curious to see where it's going.
I'm more than anything curious. I'm not exactly excited because I'm not sure what I'm excited about.
Right, yeah, it's very
But it is very intriguing.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
Speaking
Will
of
it merit an episode at some point? Probably not, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to watch, for sure.
I'll have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. I guess another new thing that's going on at the house is our roommate Andrew is planning on making mead from scratch.
Yeah, I came home one day to find like
Ooh.
Two glass bottles and six
bottles
bottles
of honey
and
in on top of his fridge, and I'm like, why do you have
that much
all
honey.
of these squeezy bottles of honey? It's probably not even the most economical way to buy honey.
No,
Let's face it.
no.
If it's coming in a convenient squeeze bottle, it's probably not the most cost effective. But then again, what else are they going to have at Hornbacher's?
I mean, if you get it, if you had like
You
a
could go to,
Costco
like,
membership, you
Costco or Sam's Club and
We
get.
could have asked Colton to purchase some from his dealer.
Oh yeah,
however many, like a half gallon or something like that.
I mean that'd make you some mead, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah. Plenty of mead.
Is he going to use that homebrew beer barrel I left behind?
Oh, I think that is still lying around here somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the.
I'm not sure what the
furnace
process
room.
is for it, to be completely honest. Like, I'm imagining there's
Well-
fermentation of some sort that goes on.
Let him know that it's there.
But,
let him.
Last
For
I
him
checked
to
on him,
use
though,
if he
he
so
made
desires.
himself a martini with
Alright.
straight with like the crystallized whatever it is on the outside of the glass.
Salt.
Mm.
Salts, is that what that is?
That's.
That's what it looks like, anyway.
I think that's what they put on the rim of glasses with that kind of alcohol in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, salt sounds right.
Certainly
Interesting.
isn't. Well, other white powders.
There are lots of other white powders that we could be talking about here.
Yes.
Good.
In some parts of the world, you never know. Maybe they do make their martinis with that sort of white powder on the end. But with this podcast, you don't need that other white powder. We're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
And what are we talking about today, Riley?
This week we'll be talking about Gurren Lagann.
Oh.
Which-
I know this is one you've
which
been saying
is-
you've been wanting us to watch for a while.
I have been wanting you to watch, and I hope this will be your incentive to finally getting around to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's usually how these episodes go.
Mm-hmm.
But
Give it a try.
yes. So, gonna be flying solo on this one because neither of the other guys here have ever seen it. So
No.
You were absent
just-
last week, so make up for it.
Yeah.
I gotta pull my weight on this enterprise somehow.
Yeah. Some way.
So-
somehow.
Gurren Lagann centers. It's an anime, by the way. We haven't done one of those for like several months now. So
Haven't we?
the
you're
last
right.
one we did was
Sword Art Online. Yeah, it's been a bit.
episode 17. So it's been like 4
Hot minute.
months.
Oh dang! Yeah, that's 20 episodes ago. Holy
Jeez.
crap! Yeah.
How time flies when you're
Yes, it
having
do.
fun.
It's in my top 5, if not my top 3.
Interesting.
So it's incredibly good. I just finished rewatching it with one of my seminary brothers who had never seen it before. He's seen a bunch of other anime, but this is one he hadn't gotten to. He's very impressed.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
The story focuses around a young boy named Simon, who is approximately 14. And he lives in this village underground called Jiha Village. And his job is essentially to dig tunnels so that the village can expand. It's all he does all day is dig tunnels, and the boss of the village feeds him pig mole steaks. 'Cause
Okay.
it's kind of one of those,
Is
like
it-
Avatar does,
Oh,
where they
okay. I was
have
gonna say.
animal glinching thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a pet pig mole named Buta that he doesn't eat. And he has this little drill on a necklace that's called a core drill that he just, it can kind of transform shape so he can use it to dig tunnels, and it converts back into a nice little necklace-sized piece. And he's quite reserved. He's kind of shy. Lots of people make fun of him because of his single-minded determination to dig tunnels. His parents died in an earthquake when he was 7, So he's an
So
orphan.
he's wreaking revenge upon the earth by driving a giant hole through it.
Many giant holes through it.
There you
The one guy in the village who kind of sticks up for him is named Kamina, and Kamina is like the polar opposite of Simone personality-wise. He's like 18 or so, and he's just this totally brazen, reckless, absolutely out there, audacious guy. He has all these grand plans, and he comes up with the ideas, and Simone is just really good at executing them. So they make a great team, because Kamina has the vision, and Simone has kind of the skills to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And Kamina's dad went to the surface, or so he claims. And no one else in the village has ever been to the surface, and a lot of people don't even think there is a surface. They think that his dad was kind of just a crackpot who disappeared one day in a tunnel and died, because they never saw him again. And so their whole goal is to try to dig tunnels until they can find the surface. That's what Kamina and Simon are trying to do.
How did these people just tunnel down here a long time ago and then just like start living down here?
Presently, nobody knows.
I imagine
It's just been so long.
It sounds like that'll be revealed as over the course of the show.
It will indeed be revealed over the course of the show.
Dum, dum, dum.
And so as they're kind of digging around, they get imprisoned for trying to go up to the surface. And while they're in prison, this giant robot mecha thing falls through the ceiling. And so this thing is like as big as the central chamber of their village, so it's massive.
Mm.
And Kamina's like, look up there, there's the surface. See, it's a real thing. Because, he dropped in from the surface. And the robot just starts going to town on people. And this lady drops in with a gigantic sniper rifle and starts shooting at this robot. And so Kamina and Simon are like, ooh, that's a surface person. They probably know some things about the surface. Let's go meet up with them. So they go with this lady. Her name's Yoko, not Yoko Ono.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Something about ladies with sniper rifles, man.
And they're trying to escape this giant robot. And Simon's like, hey, bro. This is what he calls Kamina. He calls him bro all the time.
Is that
It's
back?
like, hey, bro, I found this this weird face-looking thing in one of my tunnels. Let's go look at that, because I think it might help us. So they go down to this face thing, and it turns out that this is also it's like a couple feet tall, and it turns out that this robot face thing that he found is also a mecha, so he can pilot it with his. And it just happens to have a slot for his core drill to turn it on, like a car key.
Mm.
So all three of them climb into this like 4-foot tall robot. 2 adults and one 14-year-old kid. They're quite cramped in. It's almost like a brain-like mesh covers up the head of the robot, so it looks like a head pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And this robot they use it to go and beat the big robot that fell through the ceiling. Yoko tells them that these robots are called gunmen, and they're piloted by these, humanoid creatures called beastmen, who are, humans, but they're animals. They're sort of like human-animal hybrid things.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of bullying all the people on the surface, because they don't want them there. They want them to stay underground.
Yep.
But they can only be active during the day. And at night they go back to wherever they came from. So the people on the surface are fighting all day and sort of recovering at nighttime. And so, as they're kind of fighting their way back to the base where Yoko is from, Kamina gets this grand idea that he's going to steal a gunman and pilot it himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's Kamina and he has the ideas
Yep.
and the brazen audacity to capitalize them.
Mm-hmm.
And no one had ever done this in history. Like, no one had even thought about taking over a gunman. They didn't even know if it was possible. He's like, we're going to try it.
Yeah. Why not?
Mhm.
Let's go for it.
What could possibly
So-
go wrong?
Well, he is eventually successful. He does.
Well,
He just sort of, all of the the gunmen, have these, like, everything has a face on it.
Hmm.
So it's got like, a sort of mechanical face that he just pulls open, rips the beastman out of, and sits down in it. It's like, this is mine now. Thank you very much.
are the controls similar to the little
It's
one?
very
they
much like the little one. The little one is called Lagann, which means face. I don't think it's Japanese. I think it's like there's some other language that they're using for this, but it might be anyway.
Hmm.
And Kamina names his Gurren, which means crimson, because it's red.
Hence the title of the show.
Hence the title of the show, Crimson Face. The full title of the show is Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann, which we'll get into later. But
Uh-huh.
that it means heaven-piercing crimson face.
Oh.
And that's one of the themes of the show, because his whole idea was to pierce through the heavens, that is the roof of the cave,
Mm-hmm.
to get into the surface. And once they're on the surface, he's like, hey, look, there's the moon. I
Oh.
bet we can get there too. But they're so far away from being able to get there. They're like, well, maybe someday we'll get there. But Simon's going to be the one to do it, because he's got the drill.
Uh-huh. And it takes a drill to get to the moon.
It takes a drill to get to the moon.
Just drill through the sky.
Indeed.
It's that easy.
Yep, pretty much. So they meet up with the other humans on the surface, and they continue to start stealing more gunmen so that everyone can have one to pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have this like return point programmed into them, and so they're like, I think we should probably go check out this headquarter thing, because there's probably some
Is it the
a
dragon
way we
nest?
can put them down once and for all if we go and blow up their headquarters or whatnot. But they keep moving towards it, and they aren't getting any closer, and so like, what on earth is up with this? I have no idea. And eventually they run into this one really powerful beastman named Viral, spelt viral but pronounced Viral.
Hmm.
I see.
Yep, because he's a very masculine beastman. He's like the most human looking we've encountered so far. He doesn't have like pretty much any animal characteristics except for like claws on his hands. But he's like the first person who outmatches Kamina in a fight. The first person that beats him, hand to hand. They're both out hunting for food, and they sort of get surprised by each other, and they fight hand to hand, and later they get in their giant robots and fight each other, and Viral sort of wipes the floor with them both times. If you've ever seen that meme with like the 1 inch of sword being drawn and then like the full,
yeah.
that's from Gurren Lagann, from
Oh.
that scene where Viral is fighting against Kamina.
Gotcha.
So anyway, they're pretty concerned about this Viral guy. Eventually, they come upon the Beastman headquarters, which is actually a gigantic walking gunman that's like 500 meters long.
That's why they
So
weren't
this-
getting any closer.
That's right, they weren't getting any closer to it because it was walking
moving.
around. And there's one of the 4 generals of the Spiral King in this gunman, so he reveals to them. He's like, oh, you pesky humans have been making so much trouble for me. I'm going to squash you, yada, yada, yada. And so they're kind of confused about this whole Spiral King and 4 generals. They don't know what any of that means. They're like, I wonder if we can steal this giant mobile robot. It's like, okay. So they formulate this plan to steal the giant walking headquarters. And the night before they're to leave, Simone, like, overhears Yoko and Kamina talking. Because they've been kind of developing feelings for each other thus far. And he sees them kiss and is like, because Simone has sort of been developing feelings for Yoko this whole time as well. And so he's kind of shaken by this course of events. And he's like, he can't get that sight out of his head. So when it comes time to fight the next day, when they're carrying out the raid, he's pretty distracted. And so Gurren and Lagann, I can't remember if I said this already, but they have this ability to combine. Lagann can, like, jump on top of another robot because it's a head. Sort of like take over any other robot. So they figure that logic applies to the big one as well. So it's sort of like a co-op effort. They're both piloting the two separate machines, but sort of in sync. So for Simone's end, he's, like, super distracted, and so Kamina is not doing. He has to do all the lifting, which is not proportional, and of course, not very good for him. So he gets, like, pretty gravely injured in the course of the fight, and eventually, Simone is successful at taking over the big robot, but Kamina dies from his injuries after that. Which is pretty shattering for them, because Kamina was like, he became the de facto leader of the human resistance.
Kind of the heart and soul of the team.
Yeah. And so they were all pretty lost after his death. Even though they'd sort of accomplished their goal, they got the big one, they were sort of lost and without direction after that. And Simone blamed himself for not focusing and not keeping his head in the game. So he falls into a deep depression after this, and it's like, it's perpetually raining for like an episode and a half, because it's just reflecting his mood and kind of the way he's dealing with things. But eventually he's like, he keeps fighting, but he pilots Gurren Lagann by himself, which is like carrying out twice the load on his body, because normally it takes two people to pilot it. So it's like acting weird, because it sort of reflects, the machine reflects his mood by, he's like, he's not feeling well, so like the machine will throw up machine fluids and stuff just while he's fighting, because it's kind of a symbol of his interior disposition. But so he sees this like crate get thrown by a gunman down into a trash ravine in this post-apocalyptic grunge world they're in. He's like, this is a interesting crate. So he goes up to it, and his core drill starts like reacting to it. It glows and like points toward it, and conveniently there is a core drill shaped keyhole in this box. So he opens the box, and inside is a young girl dressed in pink. And she's just like sleeping in there, It's this dirty, grungy ravine, but inside is this like immaculately presented, girl, about his age. And she like wakes up and is like, "Ooh, this must be outside." He's like, "What?" And she's like, "Ooh, rain, ooh, mud, ooh, this is all wonderful." It's like, "How can you be this happy? Like, you just got out of a box." So she says that her name is Nia, and she's like, she's got no clue about everyday life, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It's like rain and mud are all completely novel things that she's never experienced in her life, and they don't really know anything about her. So they're like, she's pretty sus. This gal's pretty sus, throwing some Among Us memes there.
Mm-hmm.
But they begrudgingly accept her into the team because they kind of notice that Simone has an attachment to her, because like as soon as she got out of the box, like the rain stopped.
Mm.
So she sort of represents this, like shaking him out of his, inward focusedness, and, kind of wallowing in his own misery. But so they go back to their giant mobile robot base, and meanwhile we see like a conference between the other 3 of the 4 generals of the Spiral King, and they're like, these pesky humans are getting to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of us is gonna get to take a crack at them next? And the general named Adine is chosen to be the next one, and she has she decides to bring Viral along because he wants to get a chance to fight Kamina again. He doesn't know that Kamina's dead because he kind of died back at their base after they had taken over Daigunzan,
Mm-hmm.
which is the name of the thing, which they renamed Daiguren. So he doesn't know Kamina's dead. He wants a chance to fight him again, so he goes along too. As Adine's about to launch like a mega nuke at them, Nia just like jumps out onto the deck of the ship and is like, I, the princess, daughter of the Spiral King, command you to stop.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So that's the other shoe that drops.
So that's and Adine is like, what the heck is a daughter of the Spiral King doing on this boat? I better not kill them because the Spiral King might be mad at me if I do. So she's like, slinks off, and they're like, what? I knew we had reason to be suspicious of you.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I don't know. I don't remember anything about like what happened, how I got here, but I think you guys are nice, and I don't want you to die, so don't kill me. Like, okay. They start to realize she's just nice. She's kind of ditzy, and of course doesn't know a whole lot, but they recognize that she has a good heart, so they
sort of
keep her
sheltered
around.
from the world, it seems.
Yeah. So
Kept hidden.
Adine goes back to the Spiral King, and she's like, your daughter was on this ship. He's like, Nia, yes, that one I disowned. You feel free to kill them and, anyone she's with. Which they should have seen coming, given that they found her in
a box in a garbage heap.
In a box in a garbage heap. But
Yep.
so Adine comes back and tries to beat him up, but Nia acts as bait, and they sort of they defeat her that way. And after that, the remaining 2 generals take a crack at them. Simone this whole time is still very depressed. He's like not even fighting. He's just, sitting sulking in his room and carving statues of Kamina out of clay and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And Nia is like, what you doing? It's like, oh, I'm just making statues of my bro. My bro is dead. I'm so sad that my bro is dead. She's like, I think your bro is still alive. He's like, what? Well, in your heart, because I feel like I've gotten to know him just by how you describe him, and these images of him you've made. I feel like I almost know him, and that sort of helps to console him and bring him out of that and get him into the fighting spirit again. I think I failed to mention this before, but like, they've discovered a correlation between a person's fighting spirit and their ability to pilot a gunman.
Sure.
So just the more aggression and anger, not anger, but like
determination to win a fight.
Tenacity you have, the better you are at it. Even to the point like Gurren Lagann can spontaneously generate matter to fix itself while it's fighting.
Oh.
Through fighting spirit. So yeah, that's an important point.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And when they're done, it sort of reverts. So any actual damage sustained will come back eventually, but just through sheer determination, you can fix it in the moment. But anyway, so Nia sort of helps Simone to get out of his sadness and get back in a fighting mood. The third general to come at them succeeds in, his name is Guam, succeeds in like imprisoning them all through a clever ploy. And so they're all trapped in this like bedrock cave. And everyone's trying to get out, but no one's really getting anywhere. And Simone's like, hey guys, I've got a drill. So he just starts drilling at the wall. And, at this point, he's got his fighting spirit back. And, like, all of a sudden, Lagann, just appears in front of him again, like it did when he was drilling at the beginning. And it was, like, sitting on the deck of the ship, but it drilled its way all the way down to come find him.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get in Lagann, and they go and beat up all the bad guys, and hooray.
Nice. And
then the fourth general comes at them, but by this point, the fighting spirit is far too strong, and he is summarily annihilated. And so they go on to defeat the Spiral King, because they're like, well, none of this conflict will ever come to an end as long as the Spiral King is still alive, so we've got to defeat him. Meanwhile, Viral has participated in all of these fights and continues to get beaten, and he's like, I thought beastmen were supposed to be superior to these naked apes. That's what he commonly refers to humans as. Why on earth is it that we can't beat them? So he goes to Lord Genome, who's it's the Spiral King's name, and he's like, what's the deal with these humans? He's
what's
like,
the deal
with these humans?
With humans? Do you really wish to know? And so he goes and explains to him off camera, where we can't see, of course.
Only to be revealed in a monologue.
Only to be revealed in the next episode.
Oh.
When they fight with Lord Genome. So they go to this gigantic sky floating city called Teplin, and they defeat the Spiral King, and the Spiral King is like, yes, spiral power, this is how it works. The spiral is this form that in itself generates power. It by the form of a spiral shape, it has an inherent capacity to generate energy. And so that's kind of why his drill is so effective, because it's in the form of a spiral. Human beings have helical DNA, and that sort of constituting factor that pervades every cell of their body also is what gives them power. And the beastmen are artificial, like the Spiral King made them. So they are not true spiral beings, whereas humans are.
They're sort of downward spirals, if you will.
Downward spiral.
Downward spiral.
Yes. And eventually he's like, they defeat Lord Genome, but in his dying words, he warns them, where's the quote? When the land overflows with 1,000,000 apes, the moon shall become hell's messenger and completely destroy the world of the spiral. And then falls off a cliff and disintegrates.
Nice.
So they're like, what are we going to do with that?
We're going to go to the moon with a drill.
It's just me.
We sure are.
And the moon.
we certainly are going to go to the moon. So, time skip, 7 years later, Simone is sort of like been appointed the supreme commander of the New World Order, more or less.
Nice.
And he hates it. Like, he would just rather be out there fighting people and being tenacious, but of course he has responsibilities. There's another character, Rossiu, that I don't think I mentioned yet. They kind of picked him up along the way. But he's sort of like the administrator dude that sort of runs everything. And he's very, like, concerned about this prophecy that Lord Genome put out. So he wisely assumes that what Lord Genome meant by 1 million apes was humans because of the way Viral referred to them. So when 1 million human beings are born, something drastically bad is going to happen. I don't really know what that is yet, but it's obviously something they'd like to avoid. So Rossiu gets very totalitarian about things, like forcing everyone who's living underground to come to Kamina City, which is the city that they built sort of under the ruins of Teplin. Mm-hmm. And it's like really dramatically escalated in technology, way more than you might expect for 7 years, coming from essentially being cave people to, coming to the surface for the first time. But spiral power. That explains everything.
Yeah. Yep.
Spiral power. If you don't understand something in this show, spiral power.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the side characters has a baby, and of course that happens to be the 1,000,000th person.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, like, this gigantic, strange-looking robot appears out of thin air and starts going to town. It's just destroying the city. Very reminiscent of the first episode. Just, like, constantly escalating levels of threat. Giant robots coming out of nowhere. But Simone is sort of like, Rossiu, let me go fight it. He's like, no, you're the supreme commander. We can't have you going and fighting that. He's like, I'm the only one that can beat this. So he goes anyway, beats it up. Meanwhile, Nia has sort of like been possessed by this weird, there's all these red lines appearing on her, and she reveals that she is the messenger of the anti-spiral, which are this race of beings that they like grafted their genes onto some random human that just so happened to be her. It was totally random. Of course.
Not related.
But it had to be the person that Simone is most close to.
Yep.
Naturally. But she's like, yes, the moon is the human extermination system. And because the 1,000,000th person has been born, you are now a threat and must be eliminated. So we're going to kill you all now. Good night. And she does it she's like, her entire personality has changed. It's almost like she's an entirely different person at this point. Like, she's cold and calculated in the way she speaks, as opposed to the whimsical and naive person she typically was. And so
does the moon get a big evil face and crash into the city in 3 days?
In more like a month, the moon will crash into the earth, and
so it's not quite Majora's Mask, but almost.
It's not quite Majora's Mask. But anyway, so Simone, of course, is like, I'm gonna go fight the moon.
Let's do it.
And they're like, no, you can't go fight.
No, you can't do that.
When they fought this robot, which they have dubbed the Mugon, when they destroyed it, it exploded into this like 1,000,000 square fragments because the anti-spiral can't be spiral shaped. They have to be other things. And so the little square fragments like dropped onto the city and exploded everywhere. So a bunch of people's houses got burned down and whatnot. And so they're like, well, someone has to be responsible for this. Simone blew it up, so we're gonna casually sentence him to death.
Yeah.
Well,
Eminently reasonable, right?
Oh, yes.
That thing might have killed us,
I
but
mean-
this guy burned our houses down because he killed the thing that was going to kill
Yeah.
us.
These people
So-
are being all very ungrateful and whatnot,
And
but
that would make it so that there's 999,999 people instead of 1 million.
nah,
So
but
there you go.
it's too late.
Oh,
It's too late
okay.
for mercy. They're gonna blow up the whole world with the moon. So Rossiu starts constructing a giant space ark to bring as many people into space as he can, so that they survive the moon collision. And Simone's like, nope, we don't trade lives. So he gets in Gurren Lagann and, well, he breaks out more or less. Rossiu lets him, but he breaks out and let's see, where am I? I totally lost my train of thought. Anyway, I guess the whole point I was trying to make is
I hate spirals.
I hate anti-spirals.
Anti-spirals. That's what it was.
Pause for editing. And the anti-spirals threat continues to escalate. Like, they keep sending more and more robots to prevent them from getting up to the moon, and more and larger robots. So Simone's like, you know what? I'm going to combine with the Ark. This is a giant 5,000 kilometer long space robot. That's a lot of material for me to work with. I'm going to combine with the Ark. So he does, and beats up all of the Mugon and goes into the moon. Which, like, the moon has a bunch of cannons on its face. All the craters on the moon aren't just cannons.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes in there.
That's
made of
the
cheese.
moon.
He's about to use a drill to, like, open the lock. And all of a sudden, Nia appears, like, directly in front of him. He stops the, 1,000-foot-long drill, like, within an inch of her throat. He's like, ha, we beat you again. Despair. And she's like, despair is the only way to defeat you spirals. Because all you do is look forward and keep tenaciously moving on. You're too powerful if we let you do that. And the only way to keep you down is by despair. And he's like, I think the reason you've appeared every single time, at every critical moment, is because there's something of you still inside, something part of you still fighting. And I'm going to plunge this drill into the hole. And if you don't move, you'll be dead. And they're like, she's composed of anti-spiral matter, which would destroy the moon and kind of launch the attack. So they don't, it's a huge gamble by him just going and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But he does. And Nia, she moves out of the way. So he does it. He's like, I knew it. Nice.
Nice.
And so it turns out that the moon is also a giant robot that Orgenome built a long time ago.
Wait, it's all a giant robot? It always has been.
Always has been. The Earth is not a giant robot.
It's not like Transformers?
It's not like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, that too.
The Earth is not a giant computer.
My
So, of
Earth
course-
is a computer.
He combines with the Cathedral Terra, which is the name of the moon spaceship. The anti-spirals had hidden the actual moon in like a extra dimensional time portal thing. So they bring the actual moon back
Nice.
so as not to mess with the gravitational necessity of the moon for tides.
I'm going to steal the moon.
And more like take over the moon.
Nice.
But and he also rips like a hole in space-time when he's beating up one of the Mugon. That's really, really big. Casually.
Mm-hmm.
And now that he's done that, he's like, well, I guess all that's left is to go destroy the anti-spiral. And so he does. He goes and rips holes in dimensions and jumps through 11th and 12th dimensional hoops to get to the anti-spiral.
It's getting pretty wild.
And it does get extremely wild, and it's not even done yet. This isn't even our final form. So the anti-spiral is like a race where they sort of purposefully froze themselves in time to prevent themselves from evolving. Because they're like, the anti-spirals are just going to destroy the universe if all they do is constantly move forward and constantly change and evolve. They're just going to be entropic and destroy everything eventually if we let them. So we have to freeze and stop changing. And they sort of get their power from that determination.
The
which you come to
determination to not do something.
The determination to give up their ability to change in order to protect the universe.
As opposed to the spiral's ability to be determined to change.
You are filled with determination.
Yeah, no, kind of the opposite of spirals.
Right.
Which is why they're called anti-spirals, never mind.
Is there any cheese involved?
But you do realize that there's sort of a correlation there. Like, fundamentally, determination is what gives you both of them their power.
Mm-hmm.
It's the underlying principle. So they think they're totally different from the spirals, but in reality, they're not.
They're just opposites.
They were themselves spiral beings before they decided not to be. They revealed that. So
Must be spirals, but backwards spirals.
yeah, that is essentially what they're doing. So eventually in 12th dimensional space where thought becomes reality, they become 5 billion light year tall robots and throw galaxies at each other, and it's extremely exciting.
Wow, that's kind of...
But of course Simone wins and brings Nia back to Earth and marries her, and she disintegrates because she's made of anti-spiral.
Oh,
So
nice.
Oh.
Simone just becomes a sort of spiritual hermit for the rest of his life after that. And all of the spiral races across the universe get in contact and have a big meeting, and that's the end of it.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It's quite a wild ride, and there's just a lot in there.
Oh yeah,
It's a very packed show.
How many episodes?
27,
Oh, so it's
That
not
is-
very... How long are episodes?
20 minutes.
Dang, there's a lot going on.
That
in
is
this show.
fast paced.
There is an incredible amount going on.
It's very dense.
And like, I gave you like the top level overview.
Oh,
There's like, this wasn't even an exhaustive list of plot events that are
sounds pretty
significant
dense.
to talk about. I wanted to keep the summary bit under 40 minutes, and
Yeah,
I almost succeeded.
yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, there is an incredible amount of philosophy at play here. We don't have time to get into all of it.
Sure.
The thing that I wanted to talk about specifically is sort of this idea of the spiral and what it represents. So, while I drink water, because I've been talking nonstop for the last 40 minutes, I'd like to garner your thoughts on this whole concept.
Spiral.
I think the show does sound fun, and I think it would be fun to go watch
Like
it.
all
So-
sorts of crazy stuff going
Oh
on.
yeah. I think it's interesting.
Starts from a
that-
guy digging a hole deep underground to
It's funny.
throwing galaxies at people in the 12th dimension.
I heard the name Simone, and I thought of the Lion King character Timon. And digging a tunnel, I thought of Lion King 1.5. So that was just like the first thing that came to my mind. And he's got a pig friend. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Pumbaa.
That was just a weird throwaway thing. And I'm like, do I interrupt him his explanation to
Always
bring up this dumb
interrupt.
point?
It gives me a chance to drink water.
This is taking a downward spiral.
But I think it's interesting the shape itself has power to it. It's like
I'm just trying to figure out what the symbolism is there, or if there is any.
because like spiral
is-
shapes occur a lot in nature.
I suppose.
It's like there's like that seashell or snail shell like pattern
Well, and
that
then
is
like,
like the
Riley
that's
mentioned,
considered
DNA is
mathematically
helical.
perfect or whatever.
Drills.
Drills.
There are a lot of drills in this show. Simone's weapon of choice is the drill. So the symbolism behind the drill is like the spiral in general is sort of like, it has a point and a direction, and it's like a whole mass of things sort of working to that direction. So
I see.
and
Right.
that's sort of like the driving force, that determination, the sort of
And a
throwing the full force of one's will into a singular point
drill
that's
specifically
directed.
breaks through obstacles.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like the whole willpower plus giant robot thing is all about breaking through an obstacle because you're so determined to get
You
to
are
that
filled
point.
with determination.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So that does make a lot of sense. Where the drill is pointed in a direction and it breaks through whatever is in its way.
And recall when I said the full title of the show is Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann, which means heaven piercing.
Oh yeah.
And so that's sort of the paradigm of the show, is that it's constantly piercing the heavens of whatever, phase of reality they happen to be in, whether that be a
Just
cave or going
literal-
from 3-dimensional space to 11th.
Like you do.
Any other thoughts?
From the first time you mentioned that the robot he finds is shaped like a head, I'm like, I wonder if it like Gundams together with something. Or, no, not Gundam. Like Voltrons together with something else to make something
Yeah, no,
bigger.
I had that same thought. It's like, lo and behold.
Lo and behold, the whole show is about Voltroning.
Yes.
Nice. Here's this
Progressively-
giant space arc. Let me Voltron with it and go fight the moon.
Well, Lord Genome does reveal at one point that the Lagann is like a spiral warrior control unit. So it was specifically designed for that purpose, which they
Gotcha.
couldn't have known beforehand. But
when they just
they
randomly found it.
yeah,
That's why it's drawn to our main character.
yes,
Because he's got the spiral.
he's got the spiral power.
So were the Beastmen, were they a product of the anti-spirals? I forget.
No, they were the Spiral King's creation to sort of like keep them underground. I guess that's a point I could flesh out a little more.
They're like
So-
non-spiral.
They're sort of like automatons, just very sophisticated.
Mm.
They aren't genetic. They're just created by Lord Genome. And their purpose was to keep 1 million people from getting to the surface. That's what their whole existence was about. Because he, of course, knew that once the 1,000,000th person was born, then everything would get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So he was sort of, in a similar way as the anti-spirals, trying to freeze things the way they were. He was trying to maintain the status quo.
To prevent this cataclysm from taking place.
Which is ultimately why Simone defeated him. Because Simone was embodying true spiral power by moving forward and, destroying the threat at any cost. Whereas he was being the anti-spiral and freezing himself in a less drastic way, but in a similar way.
And there was a point in the show you mentioned where Simone himself kind of was frozen in an emotional state in a point in time and lost his spiral powers to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it took some
He was
friends.
sort of fixated on this point of tragedy and loss in his life where he lost his best friend.
He was
Right.
frozen in that one point, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the point at which he was the weakest. And when Lagann wouldn't respond to him, and it would vomit violently, whenever he tried to pilot Lagann. So, because he didn't have the will to move forward. So it's very rich in this sort of personal symbolism of getting over your traumas and your faults and just powering through it.
Yeah, it seems like everything in the show really serves that main point. Where Simon's friend at the beginning was more of his drive, right? He was the one with the drive to do the big things. And Simon had to find his own drive halfway through the show, where he becomes this great leader that brings people to new places and stuff. Yeah.
And that sort of moves into my second point, which is this sort of coming of age story that is tied up in all of this. Kamina is sort of this almost irrationally focused on forward movement. Like when he's fighting someone, he literally won't turn his back on them. He has to face them at all times. Like he won't even tactically reposition. So he's got almost this fixation on, never looking back. Whereas Simon is very incredibly timid at the beginning. He's like always trying to run. Kamina sort of encourages him not to. So they sort of balance each other out and again make a good team that way. But Kamina's way of doing things slowly grows on Simon over time, and he builds this virtue of being able to move forward. And when he's jumping onto Daigunzan to take it over, and he's got all these emotions inside of him, and he's ready, he's on the machine, but he can't do it. Kamina just kind of runs up to him and tells him to open the hatch. And then he just absolutely delivers a slobber knocker. Just, knocks his lights out. He's like, let me see you grit those teeth. As if to snap him out of that, inward focusedness and get him to move forward. So, which he then repeats with Rossiu later after a mistake Rossiu makes. So it sort of shows that he's internalized that lesson. And by the time they're launching into 11th dimensional space, he looks so much like Kamina does at the beginning. It sort of gives you the impression that he's fully embodied the best of Kamina and the best of himself.
Gotcha.
So essentially Kamina continues to live on in Simon and how Kamina formed Simon into the man he is at the end of the show.
Exactly.
Well then.
So some solid brotherhood there.
Brother.
I mean, he calls him bro. He's like, don't call me Kamina, call me bro.
Bro. Bruh. Come on, bruh.
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 Well, what sort of what truths can we pull out of this show?
It's important to move forward.
What was it Lou Holtz said at Seek 2017? If you're maintaining, you're dying, or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're staying static, you always got to be, you're only going to digress. So you need to keep pressing forward, to keep improving, keep driving yourself forward, and pursuing virtue and pursuing excellence and the good things of life. Drive yourself to that.
Pursuing ever larger robots.
Yes.
And ever larger things to pierce with your drill.
Mm-hmm. Be like Japan. Be pursuing ever larger robots. Did you see that video of that large robot?
I did, yeah.
I mean, who's surprised? At any rate. So yes, always be striving. Never, linger in one spot for too long.
Because that's what humans are built for. They're built for moving toward piercing heaven. They're moving toward a goal, and bringing other people toward that goal also.
Mm-hmm. Our hearts are restless
that-
unless they rest in you, O Lord, as Augustine said.
That is how we are ordered.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, like, it gets at this point that in reality humans are these spiral beings, if you want to use the show's terminology.
Mm-hmm.
They have a goal, they have the determination through and through the grace of God and through their faith, you can pierce heaven at the end.
Yeah. And the anti-spiral seems to be like the forces of evil, like, Satan and all those people who are sort of, their whole purpose is to prevent man, the spiral from reaching that. So from piercing heaven to like just completely undo everything.
To keep them stuck in a quagmire, stuck in one place or moving backward even.
Yeah.
It's an anti-spiral that prevents movement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Some pretty good symbolism there.
There's also a very Platonic hand of philosophy in play. There's a lot of philosophy in this, but like the Plato is quite obvious, where he's like
coming out of the cave.
Exactly.
That was one of the
And there is a point where they're on the surface at night, and Kamini's like, there's this really interesting thing about the human body. Like, it's hard to look down, but it's easy to look up, which is something that Plato specifically said. So it's a little heavy-handed sometimes, but
but that it leans into that as part of the moving ever forward and upward theme of the show.
And the whole idea of piercing the heavens to get to what's really real is a key feature of Plato's thought.
To going after the pure concepts, because I believe for him, like, the things we experience on Earth are like a type of thing, but then like there's got to be the truest form.
Yes, they are not. The world of the forms exists beyond our own, and it's sort of eternal and perfect and unchanging. So there's a lot of that. Goodness.
Yes.
I think the relationship that Kamina and Simone have is one of the key features of goodness.
And the driving force of the motivation of the series.
Of at least the first third of the plot explicitly. And then, sort of
it carries into the rest of
implicitly
the show because the
implicitly
new
the
city's
rest of
called
it.
Kamina City after all. So
Yes.
it's built
It's because
on
of him that any of
inspiration.
this was possible.
And like the rapid progress of the city is sort of reflective of his crazy wild abandon and like willingness to chase after seemingly impossible achievements. Like in 7 years they've already built up like a highly technically advanced society.
They also had a lot of large robots to
Speed things up.
from.
But still, I mean, it sort of
Also
reflects
spiral
that part
power.
of him.
But yeah,
Even on just a very human level, the way their brotherhood that they have with each other. And I also would like to point out it didn't come out so much in the plot summary because there's a lot, but there's this very family atmosphere to Team Daiguren, which is what they call themselves.
That seems to be a theme with a lot of the enemies we've seen, at least.
well, that's because those are the animes Riley likes.
Yeah.
And that's because they have objective quality to them.
Yeah.
But Simon is never like alone, except when he forces himself to be. Like he's always surrounded by people who are supporting him, and they're all working together for the same aim. So it's not just him being the hero by himself. It's him with the support of everyone involved. What else is there? Yeah, that's kind of the high points of. I mean, there's a lot of the goodness that's contained in the truth, of course.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But those are the distinct points I want to hit on.
Beauty.
Beauty.
Nathan and I haven't seen it, but what is
You haven't. It handles the stylistic changes extremely well, because obviously you go from like a post-apocalyptic, grungy world into cosmic plane, and it does that all without missing a beat. And they are each like visually interesting in their own way. Its art style is, very much like its attitude, just extremely, grandiose. I don't know, grandiose is the right word, but like, it's just tenacious and very fully itself. It's very unique, and it fits this post-apocalyptic sort of low poly feel at the beginning, and then kind of develops into a more robust and enfleshed thing as it goes on, which is very interesting. The soundtrack is also sort of, it facilitates that seamless transition, just creating the atmosphere that the art is putting out. Kind of this, again, more grungy musical style in the beginning, but this sort of bizarre, wacky, weird,
fantastic,
esoteric thing for the anti-spirals, because their machines are also bizarre. So yeah, it matches exactly what the art is trying to put forward.
So,
and the eye catches are just phenomenal, like the pre and post commercial things that a lot of shows have. It does this like lens flare and little music bit, and they're just phenomenal. I love the eye catches.
So you mentioned that all the robots have a face. Is there any reason for that other than just they have a face?
The robots are sort of like an extension of the person operating them. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's like the humanoid form is like the form in which spiral power thrives the most.
Okay.
So by making the robots humanoid, you sort of replicate that form.
Hence the Plato the quote about the form of the human body that you mentioned earlier. Sure,
That's more.
which I suppose leans into unity.
Yeah.
Because it sounds to me like this show is really well thought through and really well put together, where a lot of the elements are really intentional to come together in this whole.
They drive toward a
picture.
point.
They do.
That they do. Yes, the uniting principle of this whole show is obviously the symbol of the spiral, and everything that is wrapped up in that.
Wrapped up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This show is not for children. Don't let your children watch it, please.
Just
But
because it's animated doesn't mean it's a cartoon for kids.
That's true. Let them watch it when they're older. It's fantastic, but it's not for everybody. It's kind of graphic and kind of racy sometimes, but
As animes are wont to do.
as they are wont to do.
Yeah.
If that's something that bothers you, don't watch it.
Neat.
Can I be derivative for 2 seconds?
Yes.
Riley, anything else for the people?
I'm not as good as coming up with profound witticisms on the spot as Patrick is.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not nearly tired or buzzed enough to come up with random witticisms on the drop of a hat.
See, I kind of need a prompt, but then again,
Yeah,
most of
there's
my
gotta be a
witticisms are pun-ish.
It's something that's not very easy to summon, but then like little connections.
Give me the materials and I can craft something.
Yeah.
But something can't come from nothing with me.
with me, it's more like you bump a couple of wires and a arc happens, and there's like a random connection in my brain, and whether or not those things should connect isn't the question.
It's that they connect.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of my random thoughts come from. But if you want to hear more of our ramblings and podcasts and story analyses and whatnot, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. Like us on Facebook and Twitter at Palapapus. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or requests for future episodes, shoot us an email at palladiumpapus@gmail.com. There it is, boys and girls. Boy and girl, our listener, our duo.
Set of boy and set of girl.
All two of you. That'll get us in trouble if the wrong person listens.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You never know. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again next week. Later.
Bye.
Dope.